Why and how use Frost Bomb as part of your build for absolute beginners of Path of Exile. Hello and welcome back to the channel, I'm Gyro, and today I'd like to talk to those of you who are still new to the game, and I will attempt to explain one very useful mechanic and almost a hack that almost any build might need to take advantage of at some stage, if you want to progress further and start beating some slightly harder bosses of the endgame maps. Disclaimer for the experts. This mini guide or game tip video is for absolute beginners like I just said, and I'm not pretending to be an expert in Frost Bomb uses, welcoming of course your input in the comments, but encouraging you not to be a smartass and pretend that everyone in Path of Exile already knows this easy stuff, because that is simply not true. Okay? Great. So, here is what we're talking about today. Imagine a situation where you have a decent build, good enough for a casual or a beginner of the game, and it's good enough again to finish the game with and start pushing into Atlas maps, almost like kinda mid towards a very high end game like tier 10 Atlas map. That's pretty high, isn't it, by our casual standards? Say survivability is okay of the build, damage output has been reasonable so far, and you are enjoying yourself. Then you go through the map very nicely, killing everything in your way, or watching your minions or totems kill everything, it doesn't matter, that's not the point. When you get to the boss doesn't seem to have any particular indicators or visible auras, let's say, that should alert you to their special mechanics, maybe like certain immunity to curses or something like that. They would just have a red health bar that just doesn't seem to go down in spite of all of your efforts. You're like, what? What's happening, right? Or it goes down, but very, 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 very slowly, like you will retire before the boss is dead. So what is going on? Do you just give up? Do you try to up your damage to overcome their defensive layers? And the better question is, are these actual defenses, such as the boss's elemental resistances or armor that prevent you from hitting them hard enough? Or is it something else? Because I've been there, I can pretty much guarantee that relative beginners and casuals would simply give up at this point, leave the map and go into another one, hoping that the next boss is a bit less painful, and particular about dying. Go figure. This one just doesn't want to die. So you need to do something smarter about this, utilizing this rather basic mechanic that we are talking about today. And yes, it's hard to hide this spoiler up front. We are obviously talking about using Frost Bomb. And it doesn't need to be leveled up as a gem, in my experience at least, or even supported in any particular way. It just needs to be in there. So what happens here with the boss is that likely the boss either has massive life regen by itself, or it leeches health from you, or recovers a certain amount of damage done to them as life, but essentially it just means that they are recovering life. That's it, whichever mechanic they are using to recover life. There are ways to deal with some, at least, versions of this life recovery in your build, depending obviously on your class and build itself, duh. For example, taking a notable skill such as Bloodless, where the enemies simply cannot leech life from you. But as we just discussed, that would only deal with one scenario, and might not actually hit the right spot that will disable life regen for the boss reliably, as there are multiple ways for the boss to do it. So, if you drop a Frost Bomb and keep refreshing it once it expires, because it is only there for a very short duration, what happens is that way, very primitive but very reliable way of restricting boss's life and energy shield regeneration by 75%, which is massive, right? As well as reducing their cold resistance, which, as you have guessed it, would offer extra help if your build dishes out cold damage. So in this particular case, as the footage running in the background, you are seeing how I'm using my level 81 Phantasm Summoner, where my Phantasms do a lot of converted cold damage. It is not the highest damage output build that I've had in my collection, it could be stronger for sure, but suppressing boss's health regeneration allows me to certainly get ahead and do enough damage to take the boss down rather reliably compared to what you've seen at the start of the video, where their health was just not going down, right? This was intended to be a very easy gameplay hack slash tip video that I'm sure will help a lot of beginners overcome what might seem like a particular moment in your gameplay where there is an impenetrable wall in your way. Don't panic, try using Frost Bomb. It's likely to work really well, but only if it doesn't. Well, then you're back to square one, you haven't lost anything really, and then you might need to reroll a map if some particular element of your build just doesn't gel with this type of boss, counter mechanic, and that might be preventing you from taking them down. But these situations, after you've used Frost Bomb and even Frost Bomb didn't work, those situations should be really minority, and they should not happen very often. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe for more. We are about to hear from Grinding Gear Games about the next league or expansion of Path of Exile 3.18. That probably, the announcement probably is going to happen in a couple of weeks, and we're going to absolutely be covering it. So please stay tuned, it's going to be quite interesting and exciting. And shortly thereafter, I will be releasing another leveling guide. Not a build guide, but a leveling guide. Well, it is a build guide, progressive build guide for beginners, or maybe even a couple of guides for a couple of builds that I'll be recommending as league starters for 3.18. And no, as a little preview, it is not going to be yet another boring Arc Witch. Not this time. So there you go. Thank you again for tuning in today and hanging in there. Your support means a lot. Bye for now.